Hello, everybody. This is Mohammed Al-Jarrah from the University of Manchester. I'm going to present my work, which is this fusion for power-constrained wireless body sensor networks with Amplify-and-Forward relays. This work was authored by me, Dr. Imad Alsusa, and Dr. Arafat Al-Dweik. So first, I will give an introduction about the topic, and then I'm going to investigate the system model considered in this work, and then I'm going to provide the optimal and suboptimal future rules derived in this paper, and thereafter I'm going to discuss the simulation results, and finally I'm going to conclude my work. So let's start with the introduction. A wireless body sensor network consists of a number of deployed sensors to collect, record, and monitor certain health conditions of a certain patient. The main characteristics of these networks include the low cost, low latency, reliability, mobility support, and compatibility with the Internet of Things infrastructure. Wireless body sensor networks. In these networks, sensors process their observations to obtain local decisions about the physical parameters of interest. And then decisions are sent to a fusion center where received decisions are fused to obtain a global decision on behalf of all sensors in the network. Deploying amplify-and-forward relays helps in mitigating the fading effects of the wireless channel by introducing diversity gain, and it also helps in avoiding long-distance transmission. Introducing efficient and low-complex future rules is essential for the wireless body sensor networks, and therefore in this paper we are going to provide some possible future rules, and we are going to compare their performance and their computational complexity. So now let's discuss the system model considered in the work. In this work, we consider a wireless body sensor network consists of K sensors deployed to collect observations about the health conditions of a patient. Each sensor independently makes a binary decision about the existence of any risk on the patient. Such situations include the body temperature, blood sugar, and blood pressure, etc. And there are amplify-and-forward relays deployed to assist forwarding sensory decisions to the fusion center. The role of the fusion center is to utilize all the received decisions and to make the global decision using the appropriate fusion rule. The physical health condition under consideration is modeled as binary hypothesis testing problem. Such problems include the detection of heart attack and the cases in which the body temperature or level of blood sugar fall outside or inside the normal range. The binary hypothesis testing problem is defined as given in this equation on the top of the slide, where each node denotes the absence of any risk on the patient, while each one denotes that the patient is not under risk. So after making the measurements, the sensors need to process their measurements to obtain a local decision about the situation of the patient by comparing their measurements with a threshold tau k. So the detection and false alarm probabilities can be defined as following. The false alarm is the probability that the decision of the sensor is 1, but the patient is not actually under any risk. And the detection probability is defined as the probability of a sensor decision of 1 given that the patient is under risk. So after obtaining the decisions are transmitted to the fusion center with the assist of amplify-and-forward relays, and the received signals are given in this vector, the vector R, and each element in this vector is given in the equation shown in this slide, where A is a constant which represents the amplifying gain of the relay, and PK is the transmission power of the sensor. Each equivalent is the equivalent channel gain from sensor to the final destination, and N equivalent is the equivalent noise term of the channel. Now let's move to the optimal fusion rule. So once the fusion center receives decisions from sensors, it needs to collect them and perform the fusion process, which is here based on the likelihood ratio test. So the optimal fusion rule, in the optimal fusion rule, the log likelihood ratio is evaluated first using this equation, and after some mathematical derivations, it can be reduced to the second equation shown here, where Y sum is the maximally ratio combined signals. And the last step is to compare the log likelihood ratio with the fusion threshold tau sub f. So if the value of the log likelihood ratio is greater than the threshold, the final decision of the network will be H1, and otherwise the final decision is H0. It can be observed that the term Y sum, which appears in the LLR, is a maximum ratio combiner, and so to reduce the hardware complexity of the receiver, this combiner can be replaced by equal gain combiner or selection combiner. However, the optimal fusion rule still suffers from some computational complexity because it contains exponential and logarithmic functions. In addition, the exponential term may go to infinity at large SNR because the variance of the noise goes to zero at large values of signal-to-noise ratio. And this will definitely lead to numerical problems. So to overcome these issues, suboptimal fusion rules are provided here. Here we are considering two suboptimal fusion rules. The first one is called Chair-Vashne rule, which consists of two stages. In stage A, which is the detection stage, the maximum likelihood detection is applied to infer about the transmitted decisions from sensors. In stage B, which is the fusion stage, the decisions generated from stage A will be fused using this equation. The second suboptimal fusion rule is called the log-sum exponential rule, which is based on the log-sum exponential approximation as shown on the top of this slide. And after applying this approximation, the optimal LLR will be approximated as given in this equation. Compared to the previously mentioned fusion rules, the complexity of this rule is moderate. It's less complex than the optimal rule and slightly higher than the Chair-Vashne rule. So now let's discuss the obtained results. The simulation parameters used to obtain these results can be concluded as following. The results are obtained using Monte Carlo simulations with 10 to the 7 runs. Channels are IID, flat Rayleigh fading channels with unity power. The total amount of transmission power for sensors is fixed to 1, and the total transmission power of relays is also fixed to 1. And the average signal-to-noise ratio is defined as given here. The total number of sensors is divided into 4 groups, and the detection performance of each group or of each sensor in the group is concluded in Table 1 below. In this figure, the detection probability of the considered future rules is shown where the number of sensors is fixed at 16. By comparing the black colored curve with the blue one, it can be realized that introducing a relay can effectively enhance the detection performance of the network. Also, by looking at the red colored curve, it can be realized that the log-sum exponential rule has comparable detection performance with the optimal rule. Also, the Chair-Varshney rule performs very poor at low and mid-range of SNR as compared to the other two rules. For m equals 1, the three rules converge for signal-to-noise ratios higher than 20 dBs. And at signal-to-noise ratio equals 30 dB, introducing relays does not have large impact on the detection probability, and this can be observed because the black crushed curve converges to the other curves. This figure shows the probability of fusion error, which is defined as given here in this equation. According to this figure, or to obtain this figure, the total number of sensors is fixed at 44, and the fusion threshold is fixed as 0. According to this figure, there's an error floor at almost 3 by 10 to the minus 5 for all considered fusion rules. Also, it can be guessed from this figure that there's a considerable performance gain obtained by introducing amplify-and-forward relays. For example, to obtain a probability of error of 10 to the minus 4, and by comparing the black curve with the blue curve, it can be noticed that there's 8 dB signal-to-noise ratio enhancement. This figure shows the probability of a fusion error for various values of K, and the SNR is fixed at 15. The main trend in this figure that PE, or the probability of fusion error for the optimal rule, dramatically decreases as the number of sensors increases. However, for suboptimal rules, increasing K does not necessarily result in decreasing the probability of a fusion error, and it can be observed that there's a certain optimal number of sensors for the suboptimal rules. This figure shows the probability of a fusion error for different values of M, which is the number of relays, where the signal-to-noise ratio is fixed at 15 dB and the threshold, the fusion threshold, is fixed at 0. The main trend of this figure is that increasing the number of relays manages to decrease PE. For the optimal case, there's a considerable performance gain obtained by increasing M up to 3, a moderate gain when increasing M up to 12, and negligible gain if M is further increased. The figure also confirms the previous observation in figure 4, where increasing K does not necessarily improve PE for the Chair-Varshney and LSE rules. So, in conclusion, in this work, this fusion for wireless body sensor networks assisted by Amplify-and-Forward relays was studied, and 3 fusion rules were investigated. The considered fusion rules converge at high signal-to-noise ratio for the same number of sensors, regardless of the number of relays. LSE in general performs better than Chair-Varshney rule. Also, there's an optimum number of sensors for LSE and CV rules under power constraints. Future work may consider proposing a suboptimal fusion rule, which is supposed to be more suitable for power constrained wireless body sensor networks to overcome the poor performance of LSE and CV rules. And finally, thank you all for your attention.